All right, we are only 3 weeks away from the individual tax deadline, April 15th, and every Monday leading up to tax day, we're highlighting the important information you need to know to make it easier to file taxes for yourself and your business. Doug Snyder is here with us this morning. Doug is a certified public accountant and a tax advisor and a board member of the South Carolina Association of CPAs. So you are well qualified to be here. We appreciate it.
Good morning, Mel.
Thank you so much. And I should mention that business tax filing deadline, that is way past.
That was a week or so ago.
Yeah, so we're focusing on personal filings and people, of course, receiving a lot of tax forms. What are we supposed to do with all these forms?
I'm sure you're getting piles by U.S. Postal Service, but also email. And the first simple task is to make 2 piles.
Okay.
As simple as that sounds. Okay. Have an income pile and an expense pile, because as you get to the tax forms, that's really, you get to the income first and you'll go through that, and then you'll get the expenses. So at least if you have those divided up, it'll give you a start on your tax return.
And that personal tax form to send to the IRS, that's Form 1040. How do all of these forms relate to the 1040 form?
That's where it gets a little complex, but you do want to start with the 1040 because the first part of the 1040 is the income section, and it will start walking you through those forms that you have. You'll be able to see the form number and how it relates to the Form 1040. So as you start, you want to start with the income section.
All right, let's talk about wages. Of course, the form that your employer sends you and what to do with the W-2 form.
The W-2 is that's really the first section of the 1040 where you'll see the W-2. There's other type employment income that you can report besides the W-2, but that's really the main one, and certainly all the companies have been required to get those forms out to you, so you should already have the W-2. The income that's on that W-2 you have to report there. You'll need to send it in with your tax return, but also you'll need to keep it around for a while because it also shows you how much income tax you had withheld. So you'll use that W-2 form several times. All
right, and if a person has a savings account, do they have to report the annual amount earned of the interest on that Form 1040?
You do. All income, even if it's interest income, is reported. What you need to be careful of, though, is that sometimes when you invest, sometimes it's non-taxable, sometimes it's taxable. So when you're filling out those forms, or you get the forms that you're putting onto the numbers that you're putting onto the 1040, make sure you're putting it in the right place, because you have to report it even if it's non-taxable, but it's on the form.
And for people not working, living on their retirement and Social Security, do they have to report their annual earnings to the IRS?
Absolutely. All income has to go on that tax return. And if the only thing you have is Social Security, if that's the only income you have, then that's normally not taxable, but you still have to file. However, if you start having income above the Social Security that you're getting, then it'll be taxed. And so you've got to just go through and see how much other income you have, plus what your Social Security number is.
So speaking of other income, some people have other earnings from investments in the stock market. How do you report those activities to the IRS?
That is another way to, the next line you have go to another form. So you're on the 1040 and it'll tell you, send you to another form, and then you have different kind of gains, like short-term gains and long-term gains, because you start, if you have investments, you get this big thick packet and what do you do with it, but you do have to list all of those income and losses on those forms, summarize it, and then it goes to the 1040.
All right, there's so many different variables I know that come into play here, and for people who have a lot of different income outlets, it can be confusing, and you definitely simplify it for us. For folks who are interested in talking with you with filing their taxes, how can they get in touch with you?
I believe you'll have my website. There's 2 other websites, the IRS and certainly the South Carolina website, because you and I are talking about the income tax for the federal return. You also have state and maybe more state returns depending on where you have investments and income.
All right, Doug, thanks for joining us, and make sure you join us next Monday. We're going to be talking about how to report deductions on your personal tax return.